So we are continuing Meretz Hashem today on Daf Samech, page 60, and in the wide lines, 4 lines in it, the 2 dots. Haisa ishto meuberes, v'amer yiratzon shetelid ishti zachar, harezu tefillah shav. So if a man's wife is pregnant, and he davens that my wife should have a baby boy, such a prayer, such a tefillah is in vain. So the Gemara says, so again, the assumption is because the gender of the baby has already been determined, and therefore to daven for something that's already been determined is considered to be a tefillah in vain. Is that true? That divine supplication doesn't work in this type of situation. Master Rav Yosef and afterwards Leah Imenu had a daughter, and she called her name Dina. What does it mean afterwards she had a daughter? So the Gemara says, so Leah engaged in this process of introspection and self-reflection. She said as follows: there are ultimately destined to be 12 tribes which come from Yaakov Avinu. I've already had 6 boys. And each of the maidservants, Bilhah and Zilpah, each had 2 boys. That's already 10. If I have another boy, a 7th boy, then my sister Rachel won't even have as many sons as the maidservants. Miyad nepcha labas. A miracle occurred, and the baby that Leah was carrying, which was apparently a boy, transformed ultimately again into a girl. Shnei amar v'tikra es-shema Dina. So the lashon of Dina, by the way, is from a lashon of din, judgment, reflecting the idea that Leah judged herself. In other words, she said, even though again she was given this gift of a 7th son, she felt again this gift would come at the expense of her sister, and therefore she, so to speak, adjudicated the case, and a miracle occurred and transformed Dina, or transformed the baby into a girl, into Dina. So you see from here that a baby can change in utero. To which the Gemara says, no. In maskir ma'isinis. Okay, that was a miracle. That was a miracle. You can't bring a raya, can't bring a proof from a miracle. The other possibility is other possibility is that the miracle of Leah occurred within the first 40 days of pregnancy. So it's actually very interesting. So for the first 3 days after the act of relations, so a person should daven that the semen should remain viable, that pregnancy should occur. And from 3 days to 40 days, you could daven for the gender of the child. You could daven for a boy. From 40 days up until 3 months, sandal. A person should daven that the fetus, literally means that the fetus shouldn't form into like a sandal, into a shoe. What it means is that the fetus should be a viable fetus. From 3 months to 6 months, should daven that there shouldn't be a miscarriage. From 6 months to 9 months, should daven that it should be a safe delivery. So in other words, the idea over here is, you see, within the first 40 days of pregnancy, one can daven for the gender of the child. That's still being decided, and therefore again tefillah works. And the Gemara suggests that Leah's tefillah occurred within the first 40 days of pregnancy. Incredible. So the Gemara says, but 1 second. But is that true? Is that true that the gender is still, that you could daven for the gender in the first 30 days? So yet Rabbi Yitzchak's name Rabbi. Ish mazriya tchila yoledes nekeva. Ish mazra'as tchila yoledes zocher. That Rabbi Ami said, Rabbi Yitzchak. So Rabbi Abi said that if a man emits zera, a man emits seed first, then the offspring is going to be a girl, and if the woman does it, it's going to be a boy. So it sounds like this is already determined, at the act of relations. Shenamar isha kisas yalda zacher. What's the case? It could be talking about a case where they both emitted zera at the same time. So because they both emitted zera at the same time, therefore again the gender is undecided, and therefore prayer during the first 40 days is permitted because it has not yet been decided. Incredible. So the Mishnah gave another example of like a tefillah shav, of an unnecessary tefillah. Let's say one goes in and enters into the city and he hears cries in the city and he says, please Hashem, don't let that be from my home. That is considered to be a tefillah in vain. Why? Because again, the event already occurred. So whatever it is, it already is. So Hillel once entered into the city. He heard screaming in the city, and he said, Amar muftach ani she'ein zeh b'soch beisi. Hillel said, I'm positive that this is not coming from my house. Ba'alava kasar about Hillel, it was said, Mishmua ra'a lo yira nachon liba batuach ba'Hashem. That literally, again, he does not have to fear any type of bad news because his heart is secure in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Amar Rava. So Rava says something very beautiful. Kol heichad d'drash shalahai kramer shel sefer midrash, misefer l'reisha midrash. You could darshan this pasuk either from beginning to end or from end to the beginning. How so? So the Gemara says, right, Misefa l'reisha, medrash, reisha l'sefa medrash, mishmua. So if you want to interpret it from the beginning to the end, say like this: Mishmua ra lo yira. You never have to fear. Remember again, this pasuk is from. Mishmua ra lo yira from Tilim. So again, right now you can darshan it from beginning into end. Mishmua ra lo yira. You don't have to fear any type of bad news. Why? My matam nachon libo batuach b'Hashem, because his heart is secure in Hashem. Misefa l'reisha medrash. You could also darshan the pasuk from the end to the beginning. Nachon libo. If batuach b'Hashem, if a person's heart is safe and secure in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, mishmua ra'a lo yira. He does not have to fear from any evil or bad tidings, bad news. Listen, now what I want to point out is something really beautiful. The Gemara doesn't say, or David HaMelech doesn't say in Tehillim, that if your heart is secure with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, nothing bad is going to happen. That's not what it says. What it says is that if your heart is libam batuach b'Hashem, if you place your sense of security in the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, mishmua ra'a lo yira. You don't have to be afraid of the bad news of life. What that means is the bad news may occur and the difficult things may occur, but you don't have to be afraid of it, because no matter what life throws your way, you have absolute confidence that the Ribono Shel Olam has your back. And if I know that Hashem has my back, I have nothing to fear. Again, it doesn't mean that difficult things aren't going to happen, but what it means is I feel safe and secure because HaKadosh Baruch Hu's got me. It's incredible. There was a student who was following behind Rabbi Shimon Yossi in the shuk. And Rabbi Shimon Yossi saw that the student was he was on edge, he was fearful. You must be a sinner. So the student responded, well, Rebbe, 1 second, Vaksiv, Ashrei Adam Mefachid Tamid. David HaMelech says until him, praiseworthy is the person who is always fearful. To which, again, Rabbi Shmuel responded, Amrlei hahu b'divrei Torah ksiv. No, that's talking about divrei Torah. So Ashrei Adam Mefachid Tamid means, praiseworthy is the person who is always fearful that he's going to lose his Torah knowledge. In other words, when it comes to spirituality, a person should never feel that they reached the level where they're guaranteed to retain their spirituality. Rather, a person should always feel a certain level of anxiety when it comes to his spirituality, that maybe with the wrong move, the wrong decision, I could lose everything that I've acquired. Yehuda bar Nasan have a shakal v'asal basreid Rav Hamnuna. So Yehuda bar Nasan was walking behind Rav Hamnuna. Asnach, he sighed, Amarle, Yisurim Ba'i, do you want suffering? The Gemara says, Yisuri Ba'i Ho Gavra, Lasurin Nafshe, Dechsev Ki Pachat Pacharati Vayasini, Vasher Yagarti Yavoli. So again, the idea over here is that what he was saying to him was, if you sigh and essentially you act afraid or you act like you're suffering, you're inviting suffering upon yourself. But he responded back, but the pasuk says, praiseworthy is the person who is always fearful. Once again, that's referring to Torah. So we'll say a really beautiful and incredible Gemara, just about going through life with a sense of confidence, especially if your relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is solid, relationship with Hashem is strong, then at the end of the day, you could feel confident going forward. You could feel confident that at the end of the day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has your back. The one thing in life you have to worry about is that wrong decisions or poor decisions could cause a loss in your ruchnius. No matter how hard you've worked to acquire it, some wrong decisions could set you back significantly. That's what a person has to be concerned about. But everything else in life, if you have a good relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Ribono Shel Olam has got your back. Hanichnas l'krach. So the Mishnah said if a person enters into the city, there's certain tefillos you're supposed to say upon entering into the city and upon leaving the city. So when you enter into a city, what tefillos should you say? Chash Baruch Hu, allow me to enter into this city in peace. Nichnas, after he entered, Omer Bodani Lefanecha Hashem Elokai, Shech Nisani Lekrachsa L'Shalom. So before you enter, say Hashem, let me enter in with peace. After you enter, you thank Hashem for allowing you to enter in with peace. Bikesh Latzes, when you're ready to leave, Omer Yiratzam Lefanecha Hashem Elokai V'Elokei Avosai, Shitotzi Eini Mikrach Zel Shalom. May it be your will, Hashem, that you take me out of this city in peace. Bikesh, good. Yatsa, when you actually leave the city, Omer Modani Lefanecha Hashem Elokai, Shotzei Sani Mikrach Zel Shalom. You say, thank you, Hashem, for having taken me out of the city. Ugeshem Shotzei Sani L'Shalom, the same way you took me out in peace. Kach Toli Cheni L'Shalom. So to allow the rest of my journey to be in peace, V'tismicheni L'Shalom, support me in peace, V'tatideni L'Shalom, and arrange my steps in peace, V'tatzini Kav Kol Oyev V'orev B'derech. And save me from any enemies or any enemies or traps on the road. Rav Masna. Rav Masna said, when do you have to say a tefillah when you enter into the city? Only in a city where they'll execute someone without a trial. That's where a person is in danger if they enter into a city like that. But if you're entering into a city where they judge a person before they execute him, you don't have to say the tefillah, because again, there's a system, so a person doesn't have to be worried about chas shalom being executed without a fair trial. The Gemara says, I'm sorry. Other opinion. Even so, according to an alternate version, Ramasa says no. Even if you're entering into a city where they do judge before they execute, you still have to say the tefillah. Why? Because maybe you won't find a good character witness, right? And if you don't have a good character witness, again, it could be problematic for the trial. Right? So this is interesting. When you go into the bathhouse, so the Gemara says, there's a tefillah you have to say, should be your will, Hashem, that you should save me from this and from other dangerous situations. Nothing bad should happen through me. And if something bad does happen to me, ultimately, again, my death should be an atonement for all of my sins. So the idea now, what does that have to do with a bathhouse? So as we'll see in just a little bit, the Gemara understood that going to a bathhouse had an element of danger. Remember again, underneath the floor of the bathhouse was a fire. Sometimes the floor would collapse and could chas v'shalom again put a person in mortal danger. So the Gemara says, therefore you have to say this tefillah, Amar Abaye lo lema inish hachi do liftach pumila satan. So interestingly, Abaye said, no, don't say this, because I'll tiftach pele satan. In other words, the concept we're going to see in just a moment, tiftach satan means don't say things that foreshadow something negative to happen to you, because again, by saying it, it could set the stage for it to happen. So, person should not say something that creates an opening for the Satan. Amar Yosef, Mikra, what's the pasuk? Tichsev, Kimat kistom hayinu lamara diminu. Pasuk says, Klal Yisrael says, we almost were wiped out like stone, like Amora. And what does the Navi say? Maya hadalahu Navi, Shimuna Hashem, Dvar Hashem kitzine sdom. So the people refer to themselves as Sdom and Amora, and then the Navi referred to them as Sdom and Amora. So again, the idea being the Gemara says is, don't talk about things, don't talk about calamitous things that could occur, because chas v'sholem, it could open the door for it to occur. Now again, remember, we've spoken about this concept many times. We're speaking about this with dreams, that Chazal understood that a lot of times the way you talk and the way you think influences how you act and the decisions you make. And therefore, sometimes thinking negatively itself could become almost like a form of self-fulfilling prophecy that could chas v'shalom cause a person to go down wrong paths in life. Incredible. Ki nafik my omer. When you go out of the bathhouse, what should you say? Thank you, Hashem, for saving me from the fire. That's what you say when you leave the bathhouse. Rabbi Yavo, all of Beibani. Rabbi Yavo once went into the bathhouse. Ifchis b'nei bani mitusei. The floor of the bathhouse gave out. Israchesh le'nisa, a miracle occurred. Kam al amuda. So a miracle occurred, and Rabbi Avo was saved because he was standing on a pillar. Shiziv mea v'chad gari b'chad avrei. Amar Hainu Rabbi Acha. So we'll say, so the idea over here is, and he saved 101 people. He's holding 101 people by his arm. So probably a bit hyperbolic, but the idea over here is like a double miracle. Number one, that when the floor gave out, he was standing on a pillar, and therefore was able to save himself. And miracle number two, that he was able to save other people. So the Gemara says, Amar Hainu Rabbi Acha, Hanichnas lahakis dam. If a person goes into bloodlet, Amar Yiratzam Ofanecha Hashem Elokai, She'esek zeh l'refua, V'tir pa'ini, Ki el rofe ne'emon ata, or refu'ascha emes. A person should say this Yiratzam when he comes in to do bloodletting. He should say again, Hashem, it should be your will. Hashem, right? This matter, this endeavor should be healing, should be curative. For you are the truthful healer, and your healing is truthful. Because it's not really the derech of people to heal. Right? Healing really belongs to the purview of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But as people, we have to try to do whatever we can do. But we recognize that ultimate healing comes from you. Amra Bailolema Inish Hachi. Person shouldn't say this. The Tanya Bishmal, Berapo Yirape. So interestingly enough, according to this first approach, the first approach is that a person acknowledges that really people shouldn't engage in medicinal healing, because healing is really the purview of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But what could we do? You got to do what you got to do. So Abai says that's not true. The pasuk says v'rapo yirapei. Now, interestingly enough, v'rapo yirapei, the pasuk is talking about damages. That if you damage someone, one of the things you have to pay for is doctor's bills. But we darsha from that mikan shenitno reshus l'rofe l'rapos. Ultimately, again, this pasuk gives the doctor the right to heal. In other words, from a theological perspective, I might have thought maybe a doctor doesn't have the religious license to heal. After all, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a person sick. Who says that a human being is permitted to intervene in that and try to heal? Therefore, the Torah says, "V'rapo yirapeh, you shall surely heal." That gives permission to the doctor, not just permission, obligation to the doctor to try to heal. Kikoi, my Omer, when you get up from bloodletting, what should you say? So the Gemara says, Omer Bacha, Baruch Rofe Chinam. Thank you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's actually interesting. This lashon of Baruch Rofei Chilam, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, blessed are you, the one who heals for free. Now, what's interesting, of course, is when you went bloodletting, so obviously you paid for that. You paid for that service. The incredible thing is, man's healing is always limited, and yet we still have to pay for it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's healing is complete, and yet it's free. Incredible. All right, so we'll stop over here for today. Shkoyach, everyone.